pay-per-view, if you watch each one of these fights, it starts at like $75 per fight.
Compared to the current price or the historical price in the market for boxing. Great deal. And we'll give it to you, convenience. You can watch it however, wherever you want.
I actually like this business model much more than Netflix's business model. I think I'm pronouncing this right. I think it's called DAZN. It's DAZN, and it's kind of separated. I think it's DAZN. Otherwise, I don't think it's, you call it DAZN or DAZN. I think it's DAZN. Clearly, I've not subscribed for it yet, but it is very interesting. What is it? For $100, you can get an annual subscription to DAZN, and you can see, look here, October 5th, you could have just watched Triple G. I know that name. I've heard of Triple G. Canelo, I've heard of Canelo, November 2nd. These other guys I think are very popular as well. Full disclosure, I'm not totally familiar with them, but from what I've heard from my friends who are into boxing, this is a fantastic deal. Why is this such a good deal? It's such a good deal that, well, certainly the promoter who helped ink the deal says that pay-per-view is dead. This article is refuting that. Where is this guy? Golden Boy Promotions. I love the names of these promotion companies in boxing. So Golden Boy Promotions, Oscar De La Hoya. I've been all over New York City this week and felt a huge buzz. On December 13th of last year, he said, and I want to start by saying, ladies and gentlemen, pay-per-view is dead. I'm actually happy to announce that pay-per-view is dead. The guy has a little bit of bias because he's inking deals with DAZN, but we'll disregard that. This article says, well, it's not completely dead, but it's certainly going to struggle. And that I would agree with wholeheartedly. Here's why. Let's just look at the numbers. Basically, pay-per-view, if you watch each one of these fights, it starts at like $75 per fight.
It's not cheap.
So this Pacquiao fight, $75.
That you get the whole card typically with that. So it's not like one fight. There's a bunch of lesser fights that come before that. But when people were buying the pay-per-view, most of them are buying it for the titular fight.
So, HBO is charging $85 per match. So you pay $100. And so now what DAZN is doing is signing key kind of all-stars like Triple G or Canelo or these, I'm sure the other guys on there are all-stars as well, but they're signing these big tier boxers and then is packaging this up into a subscription model. And they're doing a lot of fights. And so pay-per-view just charges so much money that, yes, they are going to be in a lot of trouble. Maybe they can go get, one-off matches with key boxers, but it's
the
going to be tough.
Netflix factor here too, where you had a lot of people were worried about the rise of illegal streaming or torrenting of content, and no one would ever pay for TV again. Turns out they would if you made it convenient and put it at a reasonable price. $15 a month or roughly that for Netflix. And now for boxing, it's the same idea. There's a lot of people. There's been a huge rise of like illegal streaming of boxing matches because people just don't want to pay $75 every few months or every month or whatever, however frequently there's a big match. So this compared to the current price or the historical price in the market for boxing, great deal. And we'll give it to you, convenience. You can watch it however, wherever you want. And I imagine that's similar to Netflix, pretty effective for this target audience, and just saying, let's make it simple and seamless and put it at a reasonable price, and people will pay for it.
So what's interesting is, what is the genesis of DAZN, right? If you go on Crunchbase, it doesn't really tell you much of anything. It doesn't say that they've raised any money. Basically, this is a JV. This is a spin out. It was spun out by Perform Group, which is a sports media company majority owned by Access Industries. So if you look at what Access Industries is, it's basically Len Blavatnik, billionaire. They own a variety of different things. One of the things that they owned was certain television rights, and some of that was in the boxing arena. So he kind of seeded this, got this going. He also owns part of like Warner Music Group and all these things. So he got this going. It started in the UK, and then I think came to Canada. And then in May of last year, 2018, they announced they're coming to the U.S. They got the former ESPN president, John Skipper, as their executive chairman. And then they started making deals. So basically, Len and Access and all of that are seeding this with capital. They're now getting a lot of subscriptions to help offset that. But they had to ink and put out a lot of capital to do some of these lockups. So they started doing deals with Sky Sports box office, this Matchroom Sport. They did a deal with Viacom to get access to their promotions boxing group and then also get access to all the events televised on Paramount. So they're doing deals, right? They just did a deal, they did a deal in October of last year with Canelo, an 11-fight deal valued at $365 million. And he had just done a fight maybe a month or two before that and you could have paid, I don't know, $85 on pay-per-view for it. Now, here's the thing. The pay-per-view companies and the middlemen were taking so much of the money from the boxers. So the other thing that I think DAZN has done is help to cut out some of the middlemen, cut out a lot of these different players, go directly to some of the key talent and lock them up. So yes, it's kind of like the Netflix for boxing. The difference is the supply is actually a lot more limited and you can lock them up. I actually like this business model much more than Netflix's business model because the supply is much more consolidated. Yes,
then it's hard to compete against it. You can basically effectively create a monopoly by if you're doing it. Obviously, it's not going to be cheap, but there's a lot of people that make content out there, so it's a little bit harder for Netflix to do that without bleeding any more cash than they already are.
And now the interesting thing is they're starting to get into other sports. I think they're starting to do rugby internationally, and other, I guess, less like primetime sports. It might be a little bit harder to watch. They can probably get them on the cheap, and now have a kind of multi-tiered subscription package. I think it's a very interesting model. I think sports is the one thing that's keeping cable TV alive. And if pay-per-view boxing was their back door into the industry, and they now have the subscription model, and they now, why won't they go get like the soccer league in the US, right?
I think Bleacher Report in the US has the Champions League games, and they have, if you go into their app, they'll say, hey, well, come watch the Champions League game, and you can stream it. And they have, I think, a subscription service, so you can pay like a la carte, like I'll pay $3 to watch this match. That kind of competition is already happening. And yeah, I think you have a lot of these big licenses for the major domestic leagues coming up in the early 2020s. And it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. And along with that, you have a lot of these lesser popular sports, particularly in the US. Soccer is still not as big a draw as American football, basketball, these kinds of things. As well as these kind of more niche international sports, things like cricket in the US would be another one, whereas that's huge internationally. So if you can get these entry points in, I could definitely see them building enough of an audience where eventually they're able to compete for some of these bigger sports licenses.
Yeah. And that will be the nail in the coffin for cable TV as we know it. That's it. That's really the thing propping them up.
You've also got competing with them, though, are the big sports companies. Like ESPN has their ESPN Plus service, so they would be competing against them for rights to stuff, I imagine. Yeah. But again, that's taking something that used to be huge for cable, live sports. ESPN was a big part of that package, and now you can get it for $5 a month, or if you bundle it in with Disney Plus and other stuff, you can get it for even less than that. Yep. So that cable bundle is starting to unbundle and pick apart, and the cord cutting is definitely going to accelerate, I think, in the next 3 to 5 years as a lot of these streaming services really take off.
Hi, this is Alex Mozed. Thanks for joining us on Winner Take All. If you enjoyed the content today, which I bet you did, please comment, subscribe, and definitely message me on Twitter when we're doing live streams. Also, please note, all opinions expressed about stocks or public companies on the show are exactly that, opinions. This is not investment advice. Don't act on it. WisdomTree licensed Applico's Platform Insights data product to aid in the creation of the PLAT ETF. Thanks for joining us.